Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. The one, the only, my good friend, Lee Kaplan, here, not here in our studios, but actually by phone. Very rare. Usually we have you here in our studios. We miss you, but glad we could get you on the phone. How are you, sir?
Good. Good morning.
Lee Kaplan's with a great law firm that really they're leaders in the business litigation arena. Tells us about your firm.
Well, our firm has 13, soon to be 14 lawyers. We like to think we're pretty bright and that the younger lawyers have a lot of moxie because young lawyers need to take the initiative and learn to get ready for trial. And in a lot of firms, that's an opportunity they either don't have or don't take. And we prepare cases for trial. And then, frankly, settlements are easier to come by, whether you're a defendant or a plaintiff, if your lawyers are resolute about getting ready for trial. And that's really what we do in all kinds of commercial disputes.
Yep. And that firm is Spicer, Kaplan, and Veselka.
That's right.
Yep, and that's skv.com. And I don't know if you saw, I know you're a busy man, and I know you've been traveling, but our article, the interview I did with you on the situation with the Ashby high-rise was published at the Huffington Post last week.
I did see that, and I'm glad to be quoted. I don't think I've ever made HuffPost before.
Well, you have now, and it was a great article. I got lots of positive feedback. People were kind of shocked that a town with the business sophistication and the sense of property rights that Houston you would think would even have a struggle with this. It's really quite ironic if you think about it.
Yes, I agree. I was pretty surprised that lawsuit has gotten as far as it has so far, and we'll see what happens on appeal.
Yeah.
There are two things I thought were very interesting in the news recently. One is local, one is national, although it has Houston implications as well. And I thought I'd talk about the national one first just because it's quicker. You may have heard that there is a class action against a lot of Silicon Valley giants for their agreement not to poach each other's employees. In other words, Apple, Google, Intel, some of these companies got together and simply agreed they wouldn't hire from each other, which obviously has the effect of depressing the wages of very talented people and it depresses their mobility. A class action was filed. They've agreed to pay over $300 million, and the federal judge has rejected that proposed settlement as inadequate.
Wow.
And frankly, I think that's quite interesting. It's astounding to me that people in that area would have thought they had the right to make that kind of agreement. That's just astounding that people of that IQ, with as many lawyers as they have, thought that they could get away with it. And of course, it's interesting, Steve Jobs was apparently the moving force behind this agreement, but the others went along. Everybody except Facebook. And kudos to Zuckerberg for refusing to be part of that cabal.
So basically it was collusion amongst these IT companies not to hire from one another.
That's right. And It's no different. It's just astounding. It's no different from a case that was in the Houston area a few years ago where a number of offshore drilling contractors apparently had agreed that they were going to basically hold down the wages of offshore workers. You can't do that.
Wow.
That is something so basic, and when you're thinking about the arrogance of people with high IQs that they could get away with that, it's astounding.
Especially in the 21st century. I mean, there may have been a time, generations ago where you could get away with that without anyone blinking. But today, I mean, forget about the legal and regulatory implications. Think about the public relations bruising it could create.
Well, that's what's so interesting. Apparently, these people don't realize that your emails can be retained and produced. And so you see people like Eric Schmidt and Steve Jobs, people like that, implicated in emails in which this conspiracy is laid out. So that was pretty astounding, and that case will go forward, and I expect there'll be some more embarrassing revelations. Sooner or later, it may make it to the rest of the country. This is more of a hot topic out there. And it's astounding that they could be that boneheaded.
Yes.
So,
Out there being the Silicon Valley area, and you're in San Francisco calling in today. But San Francisco is one of my favorite cities to arrive and one of my favorite cities to leave. I always enjoy going, and I always enjoy leaving. It's funny about San Francisco.
Well, I must say the weather's better in San Francisco this week.
That's
I understand
good.
people lost power and had incredible rainstorms in Houston. Here it's beautiful now. We'll see if that lasts.
You know, San Francisco, the coldest winters are in San Francisco, Lee.
That's right. No, I once froze to death in Candlestick Park in July, so I understand that. The second thing I was going to talk about just for a second is this challenge to the Houston Equal Rights Ordinance. And I thought that was very curious. I don't know if people have paid much attention to this, but the case was filed in state court, removed to federal court, and sent back to state court. And for those of you who may be wondering, why is there so much jockeying around about that? Why does it matter so much? Federal judges have lifetime appointments, and they're probably considered immune from political pressures. The people who challenged the ordinance challenged it in state court. They were furious when the case was removed, although it wasn't surprising that it was removed because they alleged that their voting rights were impaired, which is a federal issue. I don't really know why the case was remanded, but now you're back in state court with elected judges, and what Republican judges want to uphold this ordinance in a time when you may face a primary challenge from somebody on the right. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly this case moves. I don't think you'll see too many things happening before the November election.
Right. And you believe that's because, talk a little bit about that, elaborate.
Well, I don't know whether this is going to make it on the ballot or not, but the underlying issue is whether or not there are enough signatures, and I think there's a very good chance that whichever judge gets this case, and it may bounce around a little bit, I'm not real sure where it's going to end up, but whichever judge gets this case may well hold that there are not sufficient signatures. And if it's a Republican judge, that takes a fair amount of courage because the Tea Party and people who are very conservative will be furious if the challenge is tossed out or they're unable to get this on the ballot because of purported problems with the signatures. Now, it may be that there is enough sloppiness that it will give a little political cover to somebody, but I doubt. I would be most interested in what happens at the first appellate level, because the two courts of appeals in Houston are almost all Republicans, and the Court of Appeals have a voter group that's larger than Harris County. It's a larger district, and that's a fairly Republican conservative constituency. So with all but one of the Court of Appeals judges being Republicans, it's going to be tough for them to throw out that challenge.
Interesting. Lee Kaplan, he's been our guest. He's a regular feature here on The Price of Business. Great content, as always. And I want to go into more detail on this collusion story when you come back. Maybe we could actually do another article for HuffPo about that. I think that would be interesting.
All right. Well, there is one lesson for any Houston business person.
What's that?
Your emails live on.
Yeah.
Your emails always live on. And even Bill Gates and Eric Schmidt and all these people in Silicon Valley and the large internet companies find that out to their dismay. So remember, whatever you put in an email, it's no different from sending your worst adversary in business or somebody you just don't like a letter and laying it out and letting them keep it because they live on forever.
Yeah, and in fact, unlike a letter which can get burnt and, all kinds of terrible things can happen to that, email, it's maybe even more permanent than a letter. I mean, it's incredible.
And they seem to get circulated. You send something stupid to somebody, they forward it, then it gets forwarded again. And, going viral is a really apt term because you cannot prevent the spread of your emails. Once you send it out there, it's there.
Good luck with that. Yeah.
And that's why litigation costs more than it used to, is the search for emails.
Lee Kaplan, he's with Smisler, Kaplan, and Veselka. That's skv.com, and a regular contributor on The Price of Business. Great work as always, and be safe coming back.
All right, I'll be back next week. We can talk about this in a couple of weeks.
Thanks. All right, and speaking of back, we'll be back right after these messages. Do want to remind you, best content here shows up over there at usdailyreview.com, and this is The Price of Business.